Okay, so as you can see, we're going to discuss roots and get into leaves maybe a little bit today, and we'll certainly finish that tomorrow. I'll have the short answer paper for you tomorrow. It'll be due on Friday, and then we'll wrap up this chapter. Your second vocabulary evaluation is Wednesday. Okay, so I'll make sure you have those filled out. If there are none that you can't find a definition for, we'll go over them. Yes? Well, get it done. Okay, so page 639. Okay, we'll talk about roots on page 639. Okay, if you ever have eaten a carrot, a radish, a sweet potato, then you have eaten part of a plant root. The root usually is the first structure to grow out of the seed when it sprouts. For most plants, okay, roots take up water and dissolve minerals that are transported to the rest of the plant. If you ever tried to pull out a weed, you experience another function of roots. They anchor the plant in the soil for some other plant or object. Roots also support the plant against the effects of gravity, extreme wind, and moving water. In some, in some plants, the root system is so vast that it makes up more than half the plant's mass. The roots of most plants grow 0.5 to 5 meters down into the soil. I'd be led to believe that if it's 5 meters down, it's probably going to be a larger tree-type structure, something to that effect, because if you try to put that into context, 5 meters, about how far would that be? Just a guess. Yeah, no, in feet. That's what we asked. 5 meters. That's a yard. 40 inches is a meter. So therefore, when you're making the determinations, you're running the 880, that meant 880 yards is about 800 meters. So when you look at that, it's probably 15, 16 feet down, which is actually pretty astonishing to think that plant roots actually grow that deep. And one of the reasons they have to grow that, puncture that far deep is, as you would guess, that trees do take in a lot of water. So when you're going through their first few years of development, yes, you're probably watering them every day, but eventually you're going to want them to actually root down to look for a water source so they can actually grow from there and take in the amount of water that they need. Because it's what type of tissue that moves water from the roots to where? It's a vascular tissue, but there's two types. Two types of vascular tissue. Has to go through the stems. Xylem tissue absorbs water in the roots, moves it through the roots, through the stems, into the leaves. That is correct. Okay. However, some plants such as, mesquite? Yeah, mesquite that grows in the dry southwestern part of the United States have roots that grow downward as deep as 50 meters toward the available water, which would make sense if you're in such a dry environment. Other plants, such as cacti, have relatively shallow branching roots to grow from the stem in all directions, as low branching roots that grow out from the stem in all directions as far as 15 meters. Okay, looking for limited water sources. Root structure and root growth. The tip of the root is covered by the root cap, as shown in Figure 8. It consists of parenchyma cells that help protect the root tissues as the root grows. The cells of the root tap produce a slimy substance that together, with the outside layer of the cells from the lubricant that reduces friction as the root grows through the soil, a crack in the sidewalk, or some other material. Did we read about this already? Some of this is sounding familiar, especially in the crack in the sidewalk.
I think
We did read about this. Okay. Okay.
I think we talked about it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cells of the root cap that are rubbed off as the root grows are replaced by new cells produced in the root's apical meristem. Because if it's a lateral meristem, it's going to be found in the stems. It actually allows it to do this. An apical meristem is going to be, as it said, found in the roots. Okay? These cells develop in the numerous types of root tissues that perform different functions. Okay? You also learned in section, we all right up back there? Yep. Oh, all right. Okay? In section 1, that the epidermal layer covers the root. Some root epidermal cells produce root hairs that absorb water and dissolve minerals. The layer below the epidermal layer is the cortex. It is composed of ground tissues made of parenchyma cells that are involved in transport or storage of plant substances. The cortex is between the epidermis and vascular tissues of the root. To reach the vascular tissues, all water and nutrients that are taken in by the plant epidermal cells must move through the cortex. Okay. At the inner boundary of the cortex, the layer of cells called the endodermis, okay, as illustrated in figure 9. Encircling each cell of the endodermis as part of the cell wall, there is a waterproof strip called a capsarian strip. It's located similar to the mortar that surrounds bricks in a wall. Caspian strip creates a barrier that forces water and dissolved minerals to pass through the endodermal cells rather than around them. Therefore, the plasma membrane of the endodermal cell regulates the material that enters the vascular tissues. The layer of cells directly next to the endodermis toward the center of the roots, called the pericycle, is a tissue that produces lateral roots in most eudicots and monocots. The vascular cambium develops from part of the pericycle. We call it the vascular cambium, produces vascular tissues that contribute in the increase in the root's diameter. The vascular tissues, xylem and phloem, are in the center of the root. Monocots and eudicots can be distinguished by the pattern of xylem, phloem, and their roots as shown. Okay. Types of roots that you can see, and shows a picture there of just what you would consider a regular fibrous root system as opposed to a tap root, which would be radishes and carrots, and that's what we had talked about before. Okay, so we're going to bypass that and get into the stems. Okay, stem structure and function. The main function of a plant stem is to support the plant's leaves and reproductive structures. Vascular tissues and stems transport water and dissolved substances throughout the plant and provide support. These tissues are arranged in bundles or groups surrounded by the parenchyma cells. As is true for roots, the pattern of these tissues can be used to distinguish them from monocots and eudicots as shown in the figure. Growth of a stem, typically, when you think of that with plants, okay, every ring, I say plants, of course it's a plant, trees, every ring is just going to be an annual ring in its growth. I do believe that's fairly accurate. Now, when you think of heartwood and sapwood, I think those are the two types. The heartwood would be, as you can see, the darker color. That's what you see in figure 12 there on page 642. Then the sapwood, I believe, is further to the outside. That would be lighter in color. Okay. Okay, so types of stems. Oops, no. Growth of a stem. Cells produced by the apical meristem result in an increase in the length of the stem. As the plant grows taller, an increase in the diameter provides additional support. In annual plants, an increase in stem diameter mostly is due to increase in cell size. The increase in the stem diameter in plants such as perennial eudicots and conifers is due to the production of cells by the vascular cambium. The production of xylem and phloem throughout the year can produce annual growth rings. The age of the tree can be estimated by counting the annual growth rings in the base of its trunk, like those of the white oak. Types of stems. Okay. Okay, we're not too concerned about that. We want to get to leaves. Okay, leaves on page 644. There are many shapes, colors of leaves, arrangements, and plants that different for different species. Also, the sizes of leaves can range from as large as 2 meters in diameter to less than 1 millimeter in length in a growing season. The number of leaves at the plant can produce varies from a few, such as a daffodil, to a hundreds and thousands produced by a mature hardwood tree. Leaf structure. Okay, the main function of leaves is photosynthesis, which is no surprise there, because as we know, the leaves are pointed up towards the sun. It absorbs the light, and that sunlight breaks that water molecule in half. Okay, when it does that, oxygen is given off as a byproduct. That hydrogen works in the electron transport chain, and it pushes that molecule along. Whatever enzymes are in the leaves, that's utilized for making food. Okay, leaves, we already talked about leaf structure. Most leaves have a flattened portion called a blade that is relatively large surface area. Depending upon the plant species, the blade might be attached to the stem by a stalk called a petiole. The petiole's vascular tissue connects the stem's vascular tissues to the leaves' vascular tissue or veins. Plants such as grass lack petioles, and their leaf blades are attached directly to the stem. The internal structure of most leaves are well adapted for photosynthesis. That figure 13 shows tightly packed cells directly below a leaf's upper epidermis. This location has a maximum exposure to light, and therefore most photosynthesis takes place in these column-shaped cells. They contain many chloroplasts and make up the tissue called the Pellicidea mesophyll, and below the Pellicidea mesophyll is the spongy mesophyll. Okay, consisting of irregularly shaped, loosely packed cells with spaces surrounding them. Oxygen, carbon dioxide, water vapor move through the spaces in the spongy mesophyll. Cells of the spongy mesophyll also contain chloroplasts, but have fewer per cell than the Pellicidea mesophyll. Okay, gas exchange and transpiration. That'll be the last thing I believe that we talk about in this chapter. The epidermis covers the leaf, which is no surprise because the epidermis is what covers our skin. The endodermis is what you would find on the inside. Except for submerged leaves of aquatic plants, the epidermis contains stromata. There usually are more stromata on the underside of the leaves than on the upper side. Recall that 2 guard cells border a stroma. When more water diffuses into the guard cells than out of them, their shapes change in a way that the stoma opens. Okay? Conversely, when the water diffuses out of the guard cells then into them, their shapes change in such a way that the stoma closes. You have learned that the carbon dioxide is used in photosynthesis and that oxygen gas is a byproduct of photosynthesis. The diffusion of these and other gases into and out of the plant also occurs through the stromata. Okay? In most plants, water travels from the roots up through the stems and into the leaves. Replacing the water and used in photosynthesis and is lost from the plant by evaporation. Water evaporates from the inside of a leaf to the outside through a stomata in a process called transpiration, okay, that helps pull the water column upward. Okay, let's see here. Characteristics of leaves. I think we will stop there for today. Okay, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and shut this off. Don't forget, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is good. So now you can get that vocabulary out and you can start taking your turns up here and writing these up here like we have before. So papers will be assigned tomorrow. Second vocabulary quiz is on Wednesday, and your exam is on Friday. We'll catch up to you next time.